Welcome back to Tampa Bay Today at Podcast Radio Tampa Bay. I am Schreiner, and we are going into one of my favorite parts. You know how I love to bring people into the studio and have conversations with them about what they're passionate about, be it a business, a product, a service, a charity, whatever it is they're doing that adds to our community here in Tampa Bay. It is great to be able to have the opportunity to have them in and have conversations about what's available for us to enjoy. And today we have an interesting guest that I have to be honest, I wasn't really aware of what you're doing, but it is such an important part of our community when we really get down into how the world works. I'd like to welcome Anita Camacho, the founder and CEO of Little Red Wagon Native Nursery and the Tampa Bay Butterfly Foundation and Butterfly Tampa. Welcome, Anita. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Fantastic. So whether or not you love bugs, I think even those that find bugs icky love butterflies. So... or do you find a fear of butterflies? I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm just excited about getting into the bug aspect of the nursery that you're involved with. But I guess I should back up. Tell us about yourself and give us an overview of the Little Red Wagon Native Nursery. And then we'll get into all that can be learned and explored and discovered there with you.
Well, we'll answer your first question. As far as butterfly fear, I've only seen a couple people that are afraid of butterflies.
I bet you if I go to the internet, I'll find a phobia.
There probably is a phobia, but it's rare. But so Little Red Wagon Native Nursery, we got that started during April 2020 during the pandemic shutdown. So by trade, I'm a CPA and have had a 30-plus year career in accounting, and tax season had just ended, and I'd been stuck inside while everyone else was outside enjoying the weather during the shutdown, and so I was kind of going stir-crazy, and a lot of my friends from the Butterfly Club would say, get this plant for me, that plant for me, when I'd go all over the state getting butterfly plants, and my van would end up full of everyone else's plants and no room for mine.
Right.
So I said, well, it's Earth Day. I'm going to get 2 truckloads of plants, and it just kind of on a Wednesday, we're going to sell them on Saturday, curbside pickup, pre-orders, all the things. And we sold out in 5 hours of 2 truckloads of plants. So I said, wow, that went better than I expected. And this was something that was kind of in the plan for a while to do.
Right, because you said April, and it was only the end of January when the word COVID started to float around. So, you were probably well into the planning and already trying to execute some of your business plan when the bottom fell out.
Yeah, and the business plan had been in play for a few years. It was alongside of a much larger butterfly conservatory project that we had considered for a while. So I just kind of jumped off and said, well, we're going to start with the nursery first. And it took off. We had a couple more pop-up sales, and then I needed a location. It was just, it really took off nicely. So we got the location in South Tampa, and from there we said, okay, now what are we going to do with regard to the butterflies? And then we expanded just recently, opening the bug zoo.
Well, why don't you give us the location for people that could come visit in Tampa, South Tampa?
Absolutely. So we're at 4113 Henderson Boulevard near Lois and Henderson. And Little Red Wagon is the front storefront, and within that is the Bug Zoo and the Botanical Native Butterfly Garden.
And we'll repeat this a bunch, but the website to get more information is butterflytampa.com. Very
Correct.
easy to remember, butterflytampa.com. It's it's gorgeous, looking at what you have available there. By the way, I did look it up, and I had a second. I'm going to try to pronounce this. Lepidopterophobia is if you have a fear with an encounter over a butterfly.
That makes sense.
It's an actual thing. Somebody's afraid of everything.
Yes. Lepidopter is a study of butterflies, so that makes sense.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. There's actually a method to the language, and I love looking up the etymology of words and understanding why we use things that we do. So now that you've got this up and running, and we've gotten past that hard little hump in our economy and in working with other people and the COVID era, whatever you want to call it, as you're expanding your footprint with the Bug Zoo and Native Butterfly Botanical Garden. Tell us about those. What does that look like?
So inside we have many different native species. We have a native room and we have an exotic room. So in our native room, we have a lot of our native bugs that people can kind of get up close to, not be afraid of because they're contained.
What kind of bugs?
Well, some that are not so popular, like the lubber grasshopper, which I happen to love. And we have 3 different species of scorpions that are native to Florida, and 2 that sting, 1 that doesn't. Mm-hmm. We have...
As far as I know, Florida scorpions, they're not really super deadly. They're not deadly at all, right? They're just...
Well, they're not really deadly, but
right.
just like a bee sting.
Right,
if you get a bee sting, some people are highly allergic, some people are not. You
right.
know,
But in general, they're not the ones that as kids and you're reading stories and you're watching movies and you get afraid of them. Yeah, they're not that kind of scorpion.
Yeah.
But as with all, bugs and... I don't know, is it poisonous or venomous?
It's more of a toxin, venom.
Toxin
venom.
there, yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a difference. There's a difference between the two definitions.
Right. It's just like snakes. People like to say, are they poisonous? I said, no, they're either venomous or they're not. So.
Right. Except for the snake that eats so much of a particular toxin that it becomes poisonous if you eat the snake.
Well, okay.
I learned that. I was down a rabbit hole on Nature a couple of weekends ago. It started off innocent, probably a penguin, and now I'm looking at how snakes become poisonous. So that's where I got the difference between venomous and poisonous.
There you go.
Although, know how to tell the difference if you're out in nature. So you're talking about some of the grasshoppers and the bugs and the scorpions that you have available.
And beetles and isopods. We have arthropods. We have a whole bunch of different creatures. So...
far from an expert on bugs, but I will die on this particular hill. There is a difference to the really big 2-inch cockroaches you see in your house and palmetto bugs. They are not the same. They are different bugs. Am I correct?
Different bugs, yeah.
Thank you.
We get some with wings.
They'll fly at 2 in the morning, yeah.
We don't have those on exhibit at the moment, but we do have the wood roaches, which, if you're going through the woods, you might find them if you're turning over logs a certain time of year. So they're a lot bigger, but they don't fly.
Right.
So just a lot of different species so people can get up close. We have many different spiders, centipedes, and millipedes and all kinds of things.
You have to have a special kind of bug not to burn the house, or a special kind of love for bugs not to burn a house down when you see a spider, and you actually bring them in on purpose.
Well, we do, but the thing is that even the house spiders that you might see, the little tiny ones, are they're pest control naturally.
Yeah, they are.
So there's a benefit to everything, and it's just more of an understanding and an education that we're trying to get folks to understand what these creatures are about and what their importance is to our ecosystem and benefits that they have.
So that would be the goal to having all these displays so that people can learn the value of having them.
Sure.
We don't want to, and we'll get to having like healthy gardening and stuff, because this comes into play as well with pesticides. So many people I don't like bugs. I don't want them in my house. I don't want them around my house. But there's a downside to that because they are part of the ecology of our natural environment, and by paving over everything and pushing out the bugs, we can actually change things in a negative way, correct?
Well, we're affecting our health at the end of the day.
Right.
We're at the top of the food chain, so we're destroying the bottom of the food chain, and you can't have a house of cards with no base.
Right.
And they're the base, the bugs.
Right. So, and what about the programs then to help kids especially? Because I know that's a big part of what you're doing with Little Red Wagon and the Tampa Bay Butterfly Foundation and the Nursery. You want kids to come there and see what's important. Sure, it can be exciting and icky and gross, and boys love that stuff. And,
so do girls, believe it or not.
Really?
A lot more.
More and more? Well, that there is a reason they grow up to like snakes and bats and all kinds of crazy things. There's an animal and a love for everything in nature.
Well, oddly enough, with our USF environmental science program with interns, we have more ladies than we do men going into that career field. And right now, 2 out of 3 of my bug keepers, my invert keepers, we call them, are ladies.
Okay.
So, it's really it's kind of a mix.
My algorithms have started to shift as I start looking into being healthier and, food choices, less. Like, I'm trying to avoid over-processed food. Not that I'm going to skip Oreos and mac and cheese. I've made that clear on the show. Every once in a while, you gotta. But, part of that are all the chemicals we put in our food, and it begins as we're farming them agriculturally, whether it's animal farming or into vegetables. And, I got to learn more about a peel and where that's being used and how it's in our food. And is it a net benefit or is it a net negative with having these chemicals on our foods that you have to wash off and everything else? And there are ways to do everything that we do chemically in nature. We can do it all naturally, correct?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And other countries are doing a much better job at this than America.
Right.
We're kind of the capital of chemicals.
Right.
In our food and in our wine and everything.
Right.
You can have a glass of wine in Europe and you're not going to get a headache, but if you have a glass of wine that's California or American wine or even imported, they introduce sulfates and other chemicals into the wine, and you got a headache after a glass or so. So it's just a lot of chemicals that are damaging our health as humans, and that's really the kind of my focus on and why I got into this in the first place, was to raise awareness about the bugs. Butterflies are our hook because, I know we have a couple of people afraid of them, but overall, they're non-threatening, they're beautiful, they don't bite or sting.
Right.
We love to see them flying in our garden. So if we want butterflies in our garden, we can't use chemicals. They're not going to survive that, and the caterpillars will be killed. And
are they that delicate?
Well, most bugs are.
Yeah, right. Because that's what I've been seeing, even when reading studies about how to, if you're going to use pest control in your home, a lot of what's available in stores, you go to a hardware store or a grocery store. Remember the old commercials from the 80s? Raid! Boom, right? Now it's to the point where when you spray that on a bug, if you spray it and get direct contact, it'll probably kill it. If you try to spray your baseboards and it walks through it, they're becoming resistant. And most of the products you can buy over the counter, unless you go to a pest control place, aren't going to have the effect that you think they will as a preventative. So are we changing the balance of bug health while we're using so many chemicals?
I think to some extent that's happening, but we're also breathing all those chemicals as we're spraying them.
Right,
so, we think we're killing this tiny little bug, and we're this giant person afraid of a tiny little bug. And we're inducing the same chemicals. And I doubt too many people put a mask on and protect themselves before spraying those chemicals.
No, we just go out there and hose it down, and you got your little pump, and you're walking around with a hose spray. Most of us have done some form of that. And, of course, when you get to the big farms and they're trying to put out quantity at a profit, that's where they really start to use all those chemicals and everything. It's harder, admittedly, right, when you're going to do something like use ladybugs to combat aphids as opposed to spraying the leaves.
Well, it isn't really harder, but the problem is we've caused such an imbalance in the ecosystem that it takes a little while for it to make a recovery.
Okay.
So it's and we don't have patience as a virtue, really. So the
I
problem,
want it now,
right?
Yeah,
and
I'm
we're
Veruca.
about the immediate gratification. So consequently, with nature, it's a cycle. You've got to have the predators are going to show up after. After a period of time.
Mm-hmm.
So you have caterpillars eating your host plants and or eating plants. And sometimes in some agriculture, they're going to think that this is a pest because it's eating their plants. Well, the problem is they start spraying. So when plants start getting chewed on, they release a chemical out, and the predators say, oh, there's a food source. So the predators start making their way towards that food source, and then they show up to a food desert because we've sprayed chemicals. So there's nothing for them to eat, and then they disappear, they die because there's no food. So we've kind of just, we've caused this imbalance. So if you allow the predators to show up and you allow things to get back in balance, and there will be an out of balance for 2 or 3 years sometimes.
It's making me think of the parallel to my father's garden, where he's been gardening since we moved here in 1971 on the side of the house. He has to fight the rabbits, but if he lets it go, the coyote population comes in.
Exactly.
And then when the rabbits go away, the coyotes move on, and it's just a cycle. And you start learning how to place things where it's not easy for the rabbits to get to, but they're still around in the neighborhood, and I see that naturally that way. Now, in addition to the bugs and having the right balance and taking the time and the effort to get it back to working the way it's supposed to, it's more than just bugs. You're also a big proponent of native plants to Florida being used in agriculture and gardening and whatnot.
Absolutely.
And why? Why is that important?
Well, they evolved here, first of all. I've been a gardener since I was a kid, and I didn't learn the native gardening. I learned the gardening that most people are familiar with. You buy exotic plants because that's what's more readily available. You take it home. Well, our sandy soil is not, set up for these exotic plants. So then you're constantly having to amend the soil, test the soil to make sure it's right for these other plants that don't belong here. And it's a lot of chemicals, a lot of fertilizers, a lot of other things that are getting put into our ecosystem that don't need to be here. 80% of the exotic plants have a Florida lookalike. People just don't realize it.
Right.
And, so it's just it's an undoing of this education and this, what we've been doing since probably the 20s.
Right.
To say, well, we can do this without chemicals. We don't need fertilizers. You plant the plants straight into your sandy soil, and they're used to that. They've evolved here so they can handle the Florida climate. They can handle the drought time of year and then the rainy season and all the things that Florida throws at it. They're prepared to handle erosion control, which Florida desperately needs. They handle the hurricane winds. They handle everything. And they handle the rain like we're getting right now, and they sequester the, they filter the water as it's going through the system and clean it, and it's all a system that worked really, really well till we started messing with it.
That usually seems to be the problem when mankind gets their hands on something. We try to control it.
Yeah, control and fix.
Right, and then that's the problem. We end up making a different set of obstacles that we then have to overcome. Yeah. And it's the quick fix when we try to do synthesized products, whether it be in pharmaceuticals for our personal health or to make food that is cheaper, easier to make, longer lasting that you find in the store when you go up and down those aisles. I joke about it. You can't avoid the center aisles, but if you shop around the outside, you're getting your fresh proteins, you're getting your dairy, you're getting your vegetables. There's a reason that's around the outside because it makes you go up and down every aisle to get to them. And then you see all the things with the buy one, get one.
Right.
And the flashy new and improved. And you're not looking at the back to find out how many different chemicals are involved in that. And when you mentioned earlier about things being different for farming and everything else in Europe versus here, same thing for products. You look at the back, what's on a product in the United Kingdom, for example, or anywhere in Europe, and what's available and allowed in America blows my mind. I would much rather not have. I would rather have a clear soda than one that's been artificially colored. That's just the beginning of the problem when it comes to that. So, and so we're talking about having the native plants, which attract the native bugs, and there's a whole ecosystem there, symbiosis, right? That they work off of each other,
absolutely,
which leads to our health. More and more people are looking into growing. Matter of fact, a number of years ago, there was an issue where a woman wanted to be able to grow vegetables in her front yard. And there were certain people that fought it tooth and nail, and the legislature had to get involved and passed a law saying that you can do that. Because I get it. If you're in a certain neighborhood, in seasons, a garden isn't necessarily that pretty unless it's growing the food. So they actually had to pass a law that she could do this, specifically because she had health issues as well, and she needed to grow things that didn't have the chemicals on them. They had to pass a law. Unfortunately, she died before it went into effect. Right, but it's now there, and she was one of the driving forces behind it because a lot of people may not have that much space, but if you do some container gardening or put aside even a front part of your yard, you can start growing these things. Who doesn't like fresh tomatoes or an orange tree or something here in Florida? So.
And this is widely done in Europe now. It's a community event where people have food forests in their front yard, backyard, side yard, pollinator gardens. And if, you're growing a certain vegetable and someone down the street's growing something else, you're exchanging these things and you're getting things that what's been done to them. They're not using chemicals and what you're putting into your body, and it's so much healthier and it's just, it creates a sense of community at the same time that I feel like we've kind of lost.
There's another benefit, too, because you're processing these and feeding them to your family. When you got the rinds or scraps or peels or seeds or whatever, you can compost those and work them back into the ground. And since they haven't been treated with chemicals, it's healthier to do so and to keep that going. And there's also the issue of, if you're planting, rotating your crops.
Right.
You want to do that as well. I think we learned that back around the time of the Pilgrims and the Indians and the fish in the ground, So those lessons are all out there, and that's a big part of what you do is education about native Florida, natural bugs, products, plants, and everything, so that people can understand what it is, which will lead to better decisions as they grow up and learn. You've got some great things coming up. You have a big event coming up in, I think, 9 days on September 14th. Do you want to explain and do the name drop? Who's coming and how can people get involved and have a chance to listen to the speaker?
So Dr. Jane Goodall will be in town, and she's it's a pretty big deal for her to come. She was here last year as well, and we got involved with her. We sponsored all the plants for her 2-day event, and I got to meet her and talk with her and enjoy a dinner with a whole lot of people to support her efforts and to support our environmental efforts. So she's coming to do a talk about that on the night of the 14th. It is open to the public. During the day, we'll be doing an all-day symposium for kids with her Roots and Shoots group, and we were the first in her alliance in Tampa to participate. And now I think she's got over 25, 30 groups, green groups, I'll call them, that are participating in this event and educating kids of all ages throughout the day. We're doing inspiration stations where kids will go through a cycle of three different 3 different groups that they'll participate with and learn about environmental job opportunities and careers, and just about our environment overall.
Like you mentioned, some of your leading experts and I guess students and interns and those that are going into the field are women that are getting interested in bugs. And it's once you get to understand it and you get that hands-on, you get over the initial whatever feeling you may have about these, they're absolutely incredibly beautiful and incredibly essential to our overall health and well-being, both as a human race on the planet and for the planet itself. So Dr. Jane Goodall, obviously she's known as, the chimpanzee expert. She's a primatologist.
Right.
And by the way, I guess she's 90.
She's 90.
90 years old and still active. Huh. I wonder if her understanding on health and clean
she's
eating.
Vegan.
Right. I bet all that plays into it. Now, I will never go vegan. I do love a steak. I do love the most common meat in my freezer right now is chicken breast, boneless, skinless, ready to go.
I used to be that same way. I'm not vegan. I'm pescatarian, but I gave up land meat probably about 10 years ago. My husband thought there's no way you're going to do this because it was bacon on the filet. It was, all the meats. And,
I won't tell you what I'm bringing to football Sunday with some friends.
And wings, oh my gosh, yes.
Right.
Oh yeah, I was all about all that.
There's a sacrifice.
And it's interesting when I gave it up, and I thought I would miss it, and I never did. I haven't looked back. It actually, when I smell meat cooking now, it kind of bothers me a bit.
Right. And the options as people have begun to explore that, the food that's available, whether you're full on vegan or vegetarian or pescatarian or wherever you're going. There's a lot of effort being put to make it so good, right?
Yeah.
And you can do that also. You want to avoid the over-processed options. Right. I'm not sold on, vegan burgers or, whatever because of all the things that go into it to make it resemble. Celebrate the food for what it is and make it good as is. That's kind of where I am, but I get it when people are transitioning and missing that.
Yeah.
That's the thing. So, yeah, obviously it works very well for her. So you mentioned that anybody
her
that's
event
open
will be vegan.
Right. So, yeah, I'm not going to show up with a bucket of KFC, being rude. I'm not that guy. I might think it, but I wouldn't do it. So you said that this is open to the public. How do people go? There is a ticket cost for Little Red Wagon, the nursery, correct, for the native nursery?
Well, for the Bug Zoo, or were we talking about Jane?
Explain the difference. So we have all these different things that you're involved in.
The event with Jane Goodall will be at Tropicana Field on the 14th. The kids are participating throughout the day. We've got a lot of kids coming from Hillsborough and Pinellas. I'm pretty sure those 2 counties, maybe others, to participate, and that's elementary through high school, pretty much. Right. And then the doors open to the public for Jane Goodall's talk at 5:30, and she'll be speaking at 7:00.
Okay, and that's a Saturday,
correct? The 14th, and the green groups will be tabling. We will have a lot of different animals and creatures for depending on if it's the sea life or if it's land, or we're going to have bugs. So that folks can kind of get through and see a lot of what the kids have been experiencing throughout the day. And then Jane will be speaking about 7:00.
Okay. And then what about attending your facility over in South Tampa to have this experience at any time throughout the year? Because you're open 7 days a week.
We are open 7 days a week. So, and one last thing on Jane Goodall, and then we'll pivot to that. But
yes,
there's
please.
a day of action. You asked how people could get involved. The day of action is on Sunday, the day after, and there's many different volunteer opportunities that people can sign up for. For that, we have information on our website that they can link through, whether they want to do trash cleanups to help the sea turtles, or we're working on our butterfly garden, butterfly alley. So there's going to be a whole lot of different opportunities with many different groups that day.
I wonder if a few butterflies might escape into Tropicana Field. It could make for an interesting ball game. Be very careful.
Hopefully not. I don't think so. No.
I don't know.
At least they're native.
You see one floating. It's like going to an outdoor game.
They do occasionally have a bird or two in there. I've noticed,
I know. Right. That actually concerns me. If the bird gets interested in the butterfly, that could be tragic.
Well, I think that would potentially be the end of the butterfly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's really not a whole lot of fighting ability in the butterfly to fend off, So
no,
absolutely stunningly beautiful though. And if you want to see more of these, you can get all the info you need at butterflytampa.com. Let's talk about attending, your facilities and to see those. Yes, please.
So Bug Zoo, we have three different ticket prices between $7.95 and $9.95 for kids, and then we have a different price for seniors and military and adults. So it's a ticket price when you come into Little Red Wagon. We also do annual memberships as well.
Right.
And you go through the native room, seeing all the native species. We do have a lot of reptiles on exhibit as well, amphibians and turtles and tortoises. And we have an exotic room of those kind of species, the bugs, reptiles, etc. And then you enter into the backyard where you see the butterfly lab where the butterflies emerge from their chrysalis, or moths are emerging from their cocoon. So you have the window into the butterfly lab to see that. And we do butterfly releases on Saturdays and Sundays at 2, weather permitting,
right?
Which is an educational butterfly release. We talk about the different species, what they need to survive, and then folks can go through the butterfly garden and see them flying in the wild. They come there to see us because we have all the resources for them. And it's a really tiny backyard exhibit of examples of what you can take home, and people are inspired to go and try these things at home. We have a sand dune, all kinds of different ecosystems on display.
Trying it at home, I was going to ask. I actually have a friend, a guy's like 55, 60 years old, and he gets so excited as he has started to harvest butterflies, and whenever he gets new cocoons and they start to emerge, he's starting to put pictures on Facebook so that people can see, and he has such joy in this. I imagine you get a lot of that there too, where kids want to go, I want to do this at home. Is that something that you help them get into? Absolutely,
and that's the beauty of having the native nursery and all of this in one place, because you have the native plants that these butterflies rely on.
Right.
So you can start your own butterfly garden as simply as 2 plants: a host plant for the caterpillars, for the butterflies to lay their eggs on, caterpillars to eat, and a nectar plant for the adult butterflies to nectar on. So the 2 plants get you started, basically.
Right.
So it's not a huge investment. You can go big, you can stay small, you can do it on a patio, you can, as long as it's not screened in. There's a whole lot of different ways it can be done. And it can be done on several stories up and attract certain species as well.
That's amazing. What a great way to get kids interested in ecology, give them a little
adults
education.
Are big kids, and they love it too. I got to tell you, there's a lot of big kids that come in and want to get started and get excited, just like your friend you're talking about. Yeah. My father's just gotten into it.
Me right now, I'm thinking I want a bat house. So, that's
fun too.
Exactly. So, but wherever you start, it's time to start. So, you can go to the website and learn more there at butterflytampa.com. And then, of course, go to the nursery and see it for yourself. Learn about the Little Red Wagon Native Nursery. Learn about the Tampa Bay Butterfly Foundation, Butterfly Tampa, all these things, especially if you have kids or grandkids. Get them involved and show them how beautiful it is and how easy it is to have hands-on experience and begin your own journey, even at home.
And it's safe and chemical-free gardening.
There you go. All right, so we've had the opportunity and the pleasure of speaking with Anita Camacho, who is the founder and CEO of Little Red Wagon Native Nursery. Is there any last thoughts that you'd like to share? Did we cover everything?
I think we covered quite a bit. Lots of fun.
All right,
Come see us.
I appreciate you coming in. And anytime you're having another big event, Jane Goodall's one, that's next week, Saturday. You can get all the info about it at butterflytampa.com. So go to Anita's website and then go to the Tropicana Field next week, Saturday. Not this weekend, next weekend, so that you can listen to Jane Goodall speak. You said she's on at 7 o'clock for a presentation. This is kind of an amazing opportunity to see an icon.
Tickets are pretty inexpensive. It's $10 for children and $20 for adults. So
not bad at all. That's fantastic. And, of course, you're going to be supporting the efforts of educating people about nature. Conservation.
Yeah.
You need to know. I'm a huge fan of that. I bought my annual license for hunting and fishing, which I know that money goes to support the programs here in the state of Florida to protect our environment. Anita, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I look forward to having you back. This is Tampa Bay Today at Podcast Radio Tampa Bay. We'll be right back.